Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our Youth Advocacy in Action series, episode 2. I'm glad that you can all make it. I'm seeing some new faces, some old faces, and it's just so good to see you all. So I just want to start by welcoming David, our founder and president. We also have some of our LUA team here. We have Maurice, who is VP of Special Events. We have Semery, who's a program coordinator, and we have Khadija, who's a floor member. And to our first presenter, I just saw here, Rahym, he's also here. I'd like to welcome each and every one of you who decided to spend some of your time here with us at LUI. So before we get into the nitty-gritty, we're going to do a little icebreaker. So we all know animal, person, place, or thing, but this one is going to be LUI centered. So the 3 letters that you have are the LU and the I, you know. So the rules are pretty simple. If you're the only one who has the thing or the name, then you get 10 points. If somebody else has something like you, it's 2 of you, it's 5 points. And then if more than 2 people have it, it's 0. Okay? Is everybody ready? So
I think you have to explain those rules again, Chelsea. That was a little complicated.
Okay, so animal, person, place, or thing, right? For the points segment, if you're the only person who has the name, so let's say a tiger, I get 10 points. I get 10 points. If Senery and I both have tiger for animal, we both get 5 points. But if Senery, me, and Eden have tiger, we get 0. Right? So that's how we're gonna do it. So the first letter is L. Whoever finishes first, you're gonna start counting from 10, then you say stop, and we all have to stop and call out what we have. Okay? Everybody's clear? Okay. So you're gonna begin in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The letter is L.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Stop.
Okay, let's hear the animals. If you don't want to talk, you can put it in the chat. So the animals for L. Let's go.
Yama.
Oh my God, David, why? Why, David?
That's funny,
Why?
right? Because y'all both went for the most outlandish thing.
No, because I was gonna put a lion, but then I had a feeling everyone would have put a lion. So I should have put a lionfish next
So
time.
5 for you all.
So who else put llama? Was it Senery?
Khadija.
Senery?
No, I was gonna say something else, but I did think of llama.
Okay, so Senery, what animal do you have?
Lemur.
Okay, so David and Khadija get 5. Senery gets 10. Anybody else has lion besides Kamisha? So Kamisha gets 10. Maurice, what is that animal?
What did Maurice say?
That's a species. That's a species of coral.
A species of coral. Okay.
You know, if I wasn't in ecology, I would have said that's not an animal, but coral is an animal, so fine. You get 10.
Man.
Eden has lizard. So Eden gets 10. Okay. Person.
I have Letitia.
Okay.
I have Liana.
Lizzie, Lucy, Leanne. Okay, so everybody got 10 for that. Place.
With me, look.
Oh, Sen. Okay, yeah, so 10. Place.
Library.
I have Lithuania.
Lebanon.
Okay, London. Maurice, what is that?
It's a place in Norway.
Of course.
Maurice knows some very weird names.
Yeah, this because my dissertation is on this stuff. So it's
Really?
Oh,
This
wow.
is not fair. Did you Google? Were you Googling?
nah.
Oh, okay.
I wish I could Google that fast. It would help me.
That's cheating if you Google. And then Eden has Lady Paul Drive. Okay. Thing. Let's go. Thing.
Log.
Mm-hmm.
I have land.
Land. Maurice has lock. Eden has laptop.
Lamp, sorry.
So 5. Kamisha and Seni
Yeah.
get 5 because you both have lamp. Okay. The next letter. Go ahead, Senri.
I should have said list, but it's okay. Go on.
The next letter is U. This one is going to be a bit more difficult, but you're going to start in 3. 3, 2, 1, go. The letter is U.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ding ding ding, stop.
Okay, stop. Let's go. Animal.
Do fantasy animals count?
You can say unicorn.
Unicorn.
Okay, for you, I will allow it as not you as in David, you as the letter U, I will allow it because animals with you is kind of hard. So fine. So Eden has unicorn.
There we go, Eden. Thank you for backing
David
me
has
up.
unicorn.
Oh gosh.
Anyone has unicorn? Okay, so 5.
I take a
You passed. You take a 0, you mean?
Not so
Okay, so
much.
unicorn is 5. That's your
What do
Khadija.
you guys have? Maurice, what do you have?
urchin.
I have nothing.
That's cool.
Urchin. Oh my goodness. Why didn't I?
Maurice, you should have thought of that.
I should have thought of
I
that.
should have thought of
I'm
you.
so disappointed.
Morris, you should have thought of that.
I know. Oh.
Someone else
Okay,
just
so
passed.
let's hear the others. What do y'all have?
Nothing. I couldn't think of
So
anything.
two zeros
I
over
thought
there.
it was an emu, but then I remember emus being like,
It's like E.
that was like, but isn't there an animal with like UWU or something like that?
Usually in the animal kingdom, there's another letter before it. Things never
Oh,
are as
see?
they sound.
So,
Yeah.
I had
So
nothing.
Kamisha and Maurice, what do y'all? Oh, Kamisha has nothing. Maurice, what do you have?
Me for person.
Animal.
Animal.
Oh no, I had unicorn too.
Oh, okay, so unicorn gets 0.
Oh, I'm so sorry, guys.
You just want to
Sorry.
throw
You guys are now at the same level as me.
the people who did nothing.
Well, to
It's
be fair,
funny.
it doesn't make sense.
It's funny
Well,
because
it might.
Senary chose to opt out. Y'all know at the same level as Senary.
Oh.
Imagine. Okay,
All
so
right,
person.
Have the person I have.
Huh?
I have Eudelphus. Nobody else is gonna have that.
What? I have Uthman. That's a Muslim name, so nobody else would have
Yeah,
that.
so that name. Pretty common.
Very
name.
well. Okay, Eden has Ursula. That's a good one.
Man, these names are deep.
What do you have, Sen?
My middle name, Upiksha.
Upiksha.
Okay. And Kamisha has nothing. Maurice, what do you have?
Yeah, I just have you. That's all I could really muster up. I'm sorry, guys.
No
I have the
problem.
letter U.
Let's go place. A place.
Upton.
Okay.
I have Uzbekistan.
Okay.
Very good. I did not even think of that. That's great. Utah.
Okay. Utah. Kamisha has Utah.
I have
Sen.
Uganda.
I forgot that part.
Here's something else. Eden. Oh, and Eden has Ukraine.
Ukraine. Oh man.
Okay.
None of these names came to me at the moment. Whoa.
Okay. Thing now. Thing.
USA. Oh wow.
Oh my
Nobody-
god.
That's a thing.
Why?
USA is a thing.
Oh wow. I don't
It
think
is a
that's
thing.
Oh,
thing,
place.
It's a big
place,
thing.
place.
Oh, place.
Oh,
USA.
good
Okay,
place.
right. Okay. So Eden and Kamisha get 5 for umbrella. What
I
else
said
do you have?
uniform.
I have umpire.
I have undergarment.
Okay.
I have uniform.
So
Oh,
Eden gets 5.
Oh my
Is an
gosh.
umpire a person though, centering? Is
Yeah,
an umpire a person?
So I forgot which categories I was supposed to know.
So it's a 0 for thing and a 10 for person. We'll allow it.
Okay, last one. 3, 2, 1,
Wait,
go.
hold on. Can you go over the things again?
Animal, person, place, and thing.
Animal, person, place, thing. Let me put it in chat.
Animal, person. Thanks for breaking it down.
You're welcome.
Okay, now you can go.
Okay, that hurts I. Y'all stumped. It's how you had your good, but no, it's just like, ugh.
If anyone is in the car.
9,
Oh gosh.
8,
I can do this.
7, 6,
Lowest count I've ever heard.
5, 4, 3. I was doing it for Sanry's sake. I
Okay.
lost count of what
One
number I'm at.
time.
So I think the timer is up.
Okay, yes, stop. Okay. Animal.
I just said insect.
No.
That's
No.
so general, David.
Yeah,
That is so
But it
general.
has, okay, Eden has iguana. Okay.
I have a whole species.
That
So-
was
Iguana gets 5. Maurice, what is your species?
I had the genus name. I didn't want to get too specific.
What
But
is that?
that's another species of coral.
Okay, marine
from-
biology student.
I have
Maurice gets his 10.
ibis.
You have
I
what?
don't even know what it is.
Oh,
I've
yes,
heard of
I
it
know what that
before.
is.
What-
That's
what is
a
I've heard of it
That's a
before. but
bird.
some
It's not a
people
bird?
saying that
A
it's
bird.
That's a bird.
Ibis.
It's something
Ibis
like
is
that.
a
Oh,
bird.
ibis, yeah, scarlet ibis, yeah.
Uh,
It
I
came to
don't
mind, so I wrote
Why
it.
didn't we say I what is it? I saw these as in the tick?
David, really? Exodus.
Isn't there dinosaurs
Well,
in ice?
I'm like,
Huh?
holy.
Wait, no, that's a plant.
Okay, so I
Doesn't
will
put
get
Azora.
10. Eden and Kimisha get 5.
So Chelsea, am I getting for insect?
I'm sorry, babe, but no. I'm sorry.
It's rough in these streets. Okay, I'll take the 0.
Person.
I have Ismail. No one would have that as a Muslim name.
Okay.
I have Imelda. There's a lady at my church.
Okay.
There's Imelda.
Wait, it has to be someone we know.
No,
No,
it
no,
doesn't
it could just be name.
Just a name, right? I have
Yeah.
Inaisha. It's a Sri Lankan name.
I have Edina, as in Edina
Okay.
Menzel. She's famous though, so she got more
Yeah,
points.
oh yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, she got
Okay,
more points.
and Eden has. Thank you, Rahym. They do some name made up. But anyways, I'll let y'all pass. Eden has Isabel, and Kimisha has Idella. Man, these names sound as if y'all create these just now. Anyways,
You'll never know.
right. Place.
I have Ibiza.
Okay.
I have Iceland.
Iceland. Eden has India.
It's shoot, I can't read.
Istanbul.
Islamabad.
Islamabad.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Okay,
nice.
so Eden and Kamisha get 5 because they both have India. Maurice
Oh,
has
no.
What do you
I
have,
was
David?
scared somebody had them.
I had Iceland. At first I had
Iceland.
Ireland, but I was like, that's too common. So I changed it to Iceland.
Wow, that's not, yeah, that's a supermarket.
Yes, Iceland supermarkets.
Come on.
Oh, okay, last one. Thing.
Igloo.
Mm-hmm.
Had inhaler.
Marsh-
You had what?
Inhaler.
Marsh- Oh,
Wait, hold on. Hold on, David. So Eden and Henry get 5 for Igloo. Kamisha got
Someone
10 for
stole
E.
it? No.
It's spelled differently, but it's still the same thing.
I glue.
More David, what do you have?
immersion.
What?
That is a thing.
Immersion. Wow, it is a thing. That's a big thing, though.
But what
That's a
is
serious thing.
You
Leave me
tested
alone, Chelsea. You took away.
We're in this. We're immersed in this experience right now. That's the thing. I'm with you, David.
You can't. You can't. No.
But you know,
I'm with
well,
you.
immersion therapy is a thing. So I'm decided for that
I
one.
already
Maurice,
rolled my
what do you
blood
have?
pressure, so
What do you have, Maurice?
I have ice. Very simple.
Okay.
basic.
Okay.
Love it.
Khadija, did you tell me what you had?
Yeah, I had inhaler. Inhaler
Right,
for asthma.
Inhaler.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are the points? Tally up, tally up. What are the points?
Wait, who else had
Oh, I wasn't
wait,
keeping
asthma?
track.
Automatic disqualification.
Henry,
Sorry, I haven't had lunch. My brain isn't working.
they're points for a reason.
It's okay. I'll take an L.
Oh my goodness.
I'm
Okay.
done. Do we count now for the points too?
Just once you tally up, you can just either put them in your chart or just call them out.
I got 95.
Okay.
Same.
95, okay. Anything higher?
By
Maurice.
default, I got full points.
Okay. Okay, Maurice got 100, Kamisha got 80, Eden got 80. Oh, Maurice got 90. Okay, who are we missing? 95. So
All right.
95 wins. So Khadija and
I
David
forgot how to count for a second. Just give me a second.
So Khadija and David are tied for first place.
Oh no, it's 100 for.
I want to win, so what can we do to prevent that for meantime?
I could give you 10
So
points.
Maurice said he got 100, so yes, Maurice wins.
1, 2, 3.
Damn.
I can give you 10 points. That's not a problem.
Okay, Maurice, you have won. Congratulations. I don't have a prize for you, but today will be your prize. Oh my goodness. Okay.
Thanks.
Oh wait. Sorry. Okay, you know what? Let's just end that. No, they didn't do as I thought they would have done. They were separate. They weren't separate. I'll do that
What do
later.
you mean? Oh, okay.
But I just have a couple of questions. How are you feeling? There's great, there's good, there's I'm hungry, well, for Sen. And then there's I don't know, honestly. Okay. So while y'all drop your feelings in the chat, we will get right on to business. So Rahym Augustin-Joseph is a second-year student at the University of the West Indies Cave Hill campus, reading for a double major in political science and law. He has previously held key leadership positions from Sir Frank Royal Hall representative on the Guild of Students to program director of the St. Lucia. Why does it keep popping back up? Sorry. He has previously held key leadership positions from Sir Frank Royal Hall representative on the Guild of Students to program director of the St. Lucia National Youth Council and represented St. Lucia at the region at public speaking, debating, and youth-related activities. Most recently, he was the valedictorian of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College's 33rd graduation exercise and previously represented St. Lucia at the UN ECOSOC Youth Forum at the UN headquarters. He's currently the president of the UWI Vice Chancellor's Ambassadors Corps, and sometimes in his spare time writes guest columns for Barbados Today and St. Lucian newspapers. Rahym is passionate about how law and politics can transform lives of the peoples of the region and continues to remain dedicated to expanding spaces for young people to actively participate in the development of their country. Without further ado, Rahym, take away.
Good afternoon, everybody. Chelsea, I hope that you've not picked a bad time for me to present, recognizing that the feelings in the room is that people are hungry. And therefore, to that extent, a presentation like this I trust that it may make people hungrier, but hungrier for the right things, and that is to be able to represent the people of the region. But let me first extend congratulations to this organization for the tremendous work that you've been doing. I've followed your work extensively, and I'm always pleased when young people take up the mantle of leadership through building their own organizations and laboring in the vineyard to contribute towards solutions facing young people in their respective areas of passion and interest. But even more than that, you would know that I said contribute towards the solutions and not the problems, because there's continually a trope floating around that young people in the region, young people in your country, are problems to be solved, as opposed to being viewed as solutions to the issues that we face and being viewed as a potent skill that needs to be harnessed for national transformation. So I always say colloquially, you really have to just give the youth a chance and give them opportunities. But I've made this brief point really because, as I've said, I'm really inspired by the work that you continue to do, because you see young people as opportunities. You see young people as being able to do great things, and that is really manifested in the work that your organization has done, especially within the backdrop of the many young people being seen as problems. So congratulations thus far on a job well done. But I'm also pleased to be afforded the opportunity here today to present at this webinar alongside two of my colleagues who are giants in the field of advocacy, youth development as well. And you'd really forgive me if I seem like and talk like an amateur when compared to them. It is only because of their vast experience that they share. And I implore you to do as I would do, which is ready to learn from them and learn from all that they have to offer. But now that I've sort of summarily dealt with the introductions to the brief presentation that I have today, I want to really have a conversation with you today, which I will classify as turn it up a notch, which is reflective of your theme, to be able to delve into strategies to take advocacy to another level. But more specifically, strategic planning in a team, but also within a greater focus of strategic planning within a team that focuses on advocacy, as you normally do. And therefore, it would be remiss of me if it is that I did not, or ill-advised, if I sort of run straight into strategies for you, if I start to tell you all what it is about, as opposed to really giving you what I believe as and contextualizing what I believe youth advocacy entails. So for me, really, youth advocacy is simply the process of identification. It's a process of understanding. It is a process of addressing issues that are important to and affect and will affect young people. Advocacy by youth-led organizations, for me, are very quintessential components of a modern democracy, because it is through advocacy by young people that we can create an environment whereby young people can be active participants in the decision-making process in their respective societies. It is through youth-led advocacy that we can recognize the optimal potential of young people to assist in solving the most pressing issues that face them. What youth advocacy really does, and when compared to the other types of engagement within our society, is that I believe that it creates a sustainable and empowered society where young people who will inherit the future feel empowered to control their own destiny. And that the society should really ensure that there is a wholesome participation of young people, not solely because they will inherit the future, as I've said, but because they're going to be active participants in the future of their country. And it is through that viewpoint of youth advocacy that we can locate the words of, for example, somebody like Franklin D. Roosevelt, former president of the United States, who has said that we can never build a future for youth. What we can do is build them for the future. And a key part of building them for the future is being able to provide them with the opportunities for self-development, provide them with the opportunities for professional development through our respective spaces, where they're able to learn key skills and competencies through their advocacies. And that when we prepare them as youth advocates, so when we prepare young people as advocates to transform their society, it is through that process of advocating for themselves that they really grow into adulthood, and they're equipped with the context and the ability to be able to understand the complexity of our social issues, and to be also to understand how our own actions can exacerbate or resolve some of the issues that we face as young people. So it's really through youth-led advocacy that we can actualize the viewpoint that is espoused by philosophers or Caribbean philosophers like Bob Marley, who has said that who feels it knows it. And what Bob has said really is that he has appropriately gave a clarion call through his music when he says, don't sit by your window, don't gaze out in the street, get up and move, get right on your feet, my brethren, to be able to do what needs to be done. And in many respects, his lyrics provides us with what youth advocacy is about. It's, as I've mentioned, it's about representing the interests and the hopes and the aspirations of young people. It's about being able to turn their anguish and their pain into solutions with a firm understanding of the issues that we face, and determining how their active participation will drive some of the solutions that are necessary. So advocacy is simply, as the origin of the word has noted, which is avocat, which is to add a voice. It is not substituting a voice. It is not silencing a voice. It is not picking and choosing which voices you deem that are important, but it is listening. It is listening and adding a voice that to the already existing voices of young people. However, as youth leaders, it's very important to determine which voices constitute noise, but also which voices are constructive voices, and which voices can you utilize to add value to your own movement, or to be able to add value to your team, and to add value to the strategic positioning of your team. And for me, I've realized that it really is a delicate balance between being able to determine what one represents and what one does not. But in a brief moment, I'll share with you what I believe should be really the philosophical underpinning of our own advocacy movement as young people, to show you really what I believe places young youth organizations on the right path. So the job of youth advocates, so our collective jobs, is really to be able to represent the interests of young people from the street corners and playing fields, and really carry them into the boardrooms where decisions are being made. And our movement is at a very critical point of reflection, and your strategic planning within a team must always be premised upon some very key pillars. And some of these key pillars that I believe should also be your North Star, should be your philosophical underpinnings, if you want to call it. And while my list really is not exhaustive, while I do not believe that the list is in and of itself an entirety of some of the principles that a strategic plan of a particular team should focus on, there are some things that I think must stand. And that is honesty. That is moral integrity. That is social integrity. That is legal integrity. It is the ability to have direction and vision. It is about transparency. It is about sustainability. It's about accountability, participation, diversity, inclusion. It's about responsibility. It is about effectiveness and efficiency. It's about professional development, and also about succession planning. And your team, or your strategic planning within a particular team, if you are to turn it up a notch, must have all of these in abundance. But more importantly, within the context of the Caribbean, you must seek to be able to strategize to solve global problems and Caribbean problems through a unique Caribbean lens. Because our people, of course, I think that you've realized that, and our space is a very unique one. And oftentimes when we do strategic planning within a team within the Caribbean, or we do strategic planning, or we planning generally within the region, we continue to take ill-fitted and ill-equipped circumstances and solutions without any modifications. So we transpose from the multilateral organizations, we transpose from what we call developed countries, as opposed to seeking to be distinguishable, as opposed to being able to understand in a very real way what the social context and the political context of our own being is. And to be able to turn your movement and to turn your strategic planning a notch, you must be prepared to understand and factor in the complexities and the interwoven nature of our social issues. So how does poverty fit into your strategic plan as a team? How does social exclusion, how does social vulnerabilities, how does prejudice, how does racism, how does marginalization, how does lack of opportunities for young people, how does lack of capital, how do these fit into your advocacy and your representation? And you must also be able to then analyze what is the effect of technology on your strategic planning and your team? What is the effect of globalization on the landscape of young people, which can exacerbate the issues that you face, or it can dampen your own advocacy movement? And therefore, to be able to advocate on behalf of Caribbean young people, to be able to create strategic planning for your team, which advocates on behalf of young people in the region, you must be able to hear them, you must be able to see them, you must be able to listen to them, and more so, you must be able to represent them with the pillars that I've mentioned above. But what is equally important is really a few strategies that I think are very quintessential to being able to strategize properly as an advocacy movement. And the first thing really for me is being able to represent the interests of young people in the purest type of way. And what I mean by that is that many times as youth advocates, we replicate unto no fault of ours, sometimes deliberately as well, but we replicate our limited idea of representative democracy. So for us, when we represent others, we don't have a clue as to what their ideas are. We don't have a clue as to what their aspirations are. We believe in a very narrow way that because we've been elected, because we've sometimes been appointed and selected to represent them and to advocate for them, by virtue of ballots, sometimes by virtue of our own self-imposed reign, that we sometimes forget to be able to engage them. We sometimes forget to be able to engage them until we've made a particular decision. And sometimes we sit in our, what I call an executive ivory tower, believing that by virtue of one vote, that by virtue of two votes, that we sometimes know it all. And that as opposed to constantly revisiting the people that we have so desperately needed as part of our own efforts. Our job must always be to solicit the support, solicit the views, solicit the responses, solicit the views and aspirations, the hopes and the dreams of the people that we represent, to feed into any strategic plan that a team will have. Because a very key strategy to turn it up a notch is ready to properly engage those that we seek to represent. And we must factor them effectively and appropriately into our advocacy movement. And what we are doing is we are doing a disservice if we constantly make advocacy positions without the informed knowledge of those we represent. And sometimes I liken what we do to us really becoming the monsters that we despise. As normally we constantly knock down politicians, we knock down policy experts, etc., for not engaging with us. We knock them out, we knock them down for not critically engaging with us and listening to us as young people. But we're not recognizing that by what we're doing is essentially the same thing. Because when we don't consult and when we don't represent the interests of young people by engaging with them, we're making representation on their behalf without being able to understand the context and understand the circumstances that they face. Because for some time we believe that because we've been able to go through it in the past, in some respects, we now believe that we're able to make representation on their behalf. But what is very important is that it is one thing to persuade young people on your methodological approach. It is one thing to engage young people and engage them effectively within a team to be able to get their views. It's one thing to get to speak to them and persuade them to see things how you see them. And it's a different thing to not engage them at all. And therefore, I'm so happy that one of my colleagues today is Firhaana, Bulbulia, who is the coordinator of the Report Barbados, who has a platform of which I'm associated with as well, that is able to actively gauge the voices and the aspirations of young people to fit into your own strategic planning as a team. And sometimes normally when I hear some bold projections and advocacy items by young leaders, by youth leaders reporting to hold a universal view, I sometimes giggle because I'm certain that they have not troubleshooted that idea, or rather they've troubleshooted that idea in a WhatsApp group, with people that are like-minded by themselves. And sometimes the people that they've troubleshooted their ideas and their aspirations with, they occupy the same levels of privilege as them. And sometimes we must be able to check our level of privilege and not purport to represent the interests of youth unless we've engaged with them. And therefore, we must really not attempt to continue what a newspaper editor in St. Lucia continues to call the illusion of inclusion. And therefore, I have a fear of becoming too philosophical and academic with you today. But in any instance, I want to share a brief thought with you on what I believe is imperative in youth advocacy, which at times I believe is missing from our own strategic planning and our praxis. So there's a great anti-colonial thinker called Firhaana and Amilcar Cabral, who's really noted before, and it's really applicable to our movement, that there must be class suicide of the educated class as a necessary tool for national liberation and solving some of the issues that we face. And when an idea like this is taken to its simplest form, all these gentlemen were saying here is that we cannot sit in our ivory tower of leadership with our diplomas, with our degrees, and believe that it is the only tool of our advocacy. We cannot sit there in these ivory towers and believe that we know it all when we purport to represent other people and we just feed our own ideas into strategic planning. But more so, we must recognize that these things are just tools. These things are just mechanisms, our diplomas and our degrees, to be able to translate the hopes and dreams. But it is not everything. And it is not everything because while the level of education that we have is important for leadership, it's important for statecraft, it's important for advocacy, but sometimes we must put it in the spectator seat. Sometimes we put our academic qualifications in the pavilion, especially when it is that advocacy commences. Now, I don't want to turn this obviously into an anti-colonial school session, but I also don't want to do the injustice of this academic work by relegating it to just a virtue, by relegating it just to a quality of an individual. But what these gentlemen were saying was that this idea of not committing class suicide is a warning. The idea is that we must guard against what one despises. We must guard against being what we despise. But we must also guard against becoming what we are fighting against. And therefore, the point of the struggle is not to replace the colonizer. The point of the struggle is not to replace poverty and marginalizations with other issues. The point is to be able to create an environment for people to thrive and develop fundamentally social different relations. So leaders like you, leaders like myself, we must always be cognizant of the class question. We must always be cognizant that our intellectual education, our intellectual prowess, our education, our diplomas, they put us at a point of what we call a dual character. And that dual character is that on one hand, we have the skills that are necessary for the struggle. You have the skills by virtue of your academic qualifications for advocacy. You have the skills by virtue of your experience and by virtue of you feeling it and knowing it, as Bob has said, to be able to advocate for others. But on the other hand, you have short-term interests, which sometimes trump the long-term existential interests in our struggle. So in other words, you as advocates are important to the liberation, but you can also be its biggest threats. Let me say this again. You are essential to the struggle. You are essential to advocacy and representing the interests of young Barbadians and representing the interests of Caribbean young people, because you have the know-it-all, you have the skills, you have the aspirations. But if you don't engage with them critically, if you don't always commit class suicide, if it is that you don't always check your class and check your privilege and not purport to hold the view that you hold, that I hold as a universal view, then we are becoming the biggest threats to the movement. And therefore, if it is that we want our advocacy to remain relevant, if we want our advocacy to remain successful, if we want our advocacy to be part of a regional identity, we need to ensure that we're representing the interests of young people in the purest form. Chancellor, I want you to tell me how much time I have left. So what we must do is really ensure that we do not scorn on the youth movement. And what I've realized is that as part of what I want you to do is part of your strategic planning within a team, your philosophical basis must always be to recognize that you are going, you are recognizing that you are already going to go beyond these positions, but that when it is that you are now within other positions able to make the changes that you advocated for, you need to be able to ensure that you don't scorn on the movement and not scorn on young people, but also seek to empower them. So for me, I like to utilize a four-phase approach or rubric when dealing with strategic planning, but more so strategic planning within a team when dealing with advocacy. And that it is important in youth organizations like ours to be able to know what we're talking about and to know the advocacy issues. And it's not enough for us to want to commit ourselves to understanding the literature in a very small way, in a very minute way. But if it is that we want to translate the hopes and dreams of young people into boardrooms, we must know it even better than those that we're making the representations to. So your strategic planning must ask some very fundamental questions. When you're looking at some of the issues that we're facing in this country and facing across the region, you must be able to ask yourself what needs to change. You need to be able to ask yourself, why is this an issue? What do I want to happen as a result of me making representation on this issue? What is the cost of not dealing with this issue? What positive change can accrue if it is that we deal with it? What is the literature saying? What is the analysis of this issue saying? What steps can be taken to be able to solve this issue? Who has the power? How can we make it happen? What are the key messages that we must do to be able to solve some of these issues? Can it be solved? What are my tactics? What are my strategies? Are there any risks? Are there any challenges? What are the lessons for the future? Some of these things are very important as part of our advocacy movement to be able to ensure that we're strategically planning properly if it is that we want to turn it up a notch. But for me, I think that it's really critical that what we must do is really understanding the context of the issue or the situation that we're possibly advocating on behalf of as part of our strategic plan. We must interrogate why we care about certain issues. And I've noticed that once the issues you advocate for, once you're planning or strategizing on a particular plan for an issue, once it lights up a belly or lights up a fire story under you and under your belly, then it is almost impossible for you to fight with the same vigor and passion as somebody who does not. And what you must always ask yourself and ask your organization as part of your strategic planning is, why do you care about this issue? And who else should care about this issue? And more so, why is it that the care that you have for a particular issue is not shared by others? And what must you do? And what must your organization do as part of your strategic planning to get others to care about the issue in the same way that you do? And some of these things are very, very important as part of it. And when you've been able to identify the whys and the hows and the ifs, you must be able to conduct the necessary research. So as part of your strategic plan, I want you to bask in the literature. Don't limit your research to what you deem as palatable or deem as necessary for your own reading. And sometimes I realize that academics seek to read things that only align with their own philosophical thought. But don't narrow yourself, because you will meet individuals who form what we call the other side of the camp. And if it is that you've met with individuals who form the other side of the camp, you must be able to persuade them as to what is your viewpoint and why it is that you think that you need to see things that the way that they need to. And that is very, very important. But more so, you must be able, as part of your strategic plan, to know what the existing policies are. You must be able to know what the failures of the movement are. You must be able to know what the successes are at previous attempts, and never for a moment believe that you're starting fresh. All that you're doing is really building a bridge or being part of this built bridge of advocacy on a particular issue, because you're not really viewing advocacy through a fresh lens. Many individuals have been there before. Many individuals have been part of that same strategic planning process for this same issue, and they failed and they've succeeded in some instances. But being able to understand perfectly why they failed and why they succeeded will make your strategic planning even more focused and even more pointed. In a very real way, what you must be able to do is develop key messages as part of your strategic planning. When you've done the research, when you've understood what needs to be done, when you've identified your partners and your influencers, you must be able to tell a story. Your strategic planning within a team must always tell a story. And you must be able to always have at the back of your mind that what you want to do is allow others to share the same conviction on an issue that you have. And some of these tactics that you then employ as part of your key messaging is that your movement must, in the 21st century, have a social media component. Your movement can also take the focus, or your strategic plan can be buttressed by your respective petitions, your policy briefs, your interviews, your requesting of meetings, your public discourse, your protests, your events, your media campaigns. All of these things are important to your strategic planning on your own advocacy. And again, something that I must allude you of, which is part of what I describe as the world media tactic, is that beware of personalities within your movement or within your strategic planning process and within a team that seek to sensationalize issues and scandalize issues for you to be able to increase tidbits. In many ways, I think these individuals reflect who we are as people. We like to sensationalize issues that sometimes don't really need sensationalizing. But at the same time, I don't know that I subscribe fully to the team or the camp that says that all publicity is good publicity. But for those who are part of that camp, you want to always remember very, very squarely that your messaging must be manageable, and your strategic planning within a team and what you want to communicate across to your audience must always be manageable. And you must really be communicating what it is that you want them to be able to hear. And sometimes as part of your strategic planning for a team, or as part of your advocacy items, we are hesitant at the same time to be able to engage with some of these individuals. But we, as part of this movement, have always become conscious that we must be able to speak truth to power. And as part of that, as part of your own strategic planning within a team and being able to advocate on a particular issue, individuals must be overly committed to not ramp up CVs and to be able to ramp up resumes, among other things, but be really committed to it, because you must recognize that your advocacy movement transcends beyond the confines of 10 or 15 or 20 individuals, but that you are representing people who are looking for visionary, relentless, and fearless leadership who is unwavering in their approach and very consistent in their approach. For your movement, especially focusing on mental health, there are some key things as I close that I want you to be able to consider. And some of these key things are spreading. That mental health within the region has not been taken seriously because of our colonial experience. Yeah, let me say that again. Mental health within the region has not been taken seriously because of our colonial experience. The exploitation of our bodies, the exploitation of our souls, the anti-liberation thought that has been imposed within our minds have allowed us to think that we are so resilient that we need not get attention, that we need not take the remedial attention that is necessary, because we believe that we can brush that aside. So for example, if your advocacy item is reviewing for some countries within the region, let's say the corporal punishment laws or the corporal punishment laws within the region, you hear the thought of religion seeping into it, because people say spare the rod and spoil the child. But you have a cultural underpinning that says, but particularly perpetuated by the older folks, which say that, listen, it is because I got the licks that I turned out this way, or that licks didn't do anything to me. So therefore it justifies in their minds that they could perpetuate it to others. But all it does is create a culture of violence. And the probing question that your strategic plan, I'm just drawing this as an example, but the probing question that your strategic plan must ask is, or ask these individuals who believe that the licks have done them nothing, is, did the licks do you nothing, or are you too scared to find out what it has done? Have you categorized success as how many cars that you have? How many Mercedes-Benz that you drive? How many children that you have? How much money you make in a month? And if you categorize success through these material mechanisms, then you are never able to submit yourself to a process of understanding what the licks did to you. And to that extent, I want you to leave you with that thought, is that as part of your strategic planning within a team for your respective advocacy, you must be able to interrogate and ask people why they think what they think, how they think what they think, where it is that they got the information that they think what they think, and what you can do to be able to change minds. Your job is of changing minds and changing hearts. The policies will come. There are a million policy briefs across the world on so many of our issues that we face. But until you've reached the hearts and minds of Caribbean people through a good story, through understanding what the effects of our history has done to us, then I think that is the process in which we are able to be able to go. It is a great task. It's a great cause, but great causes can never be won by doubtful men and women. Let's turn it up a notch. Thank you, Chelsea.
Thank you very, very much, Rahym, for that. Listen, I mean, I have heard you speak before, but I was taken aback every single time. Thank you so much.
Okay, I guess it is time for the question and answer segment. I have one question that really stuck out to me as well during the whole thing, and everything you said was very beneficial. I know I act upon a lot of what you said already and all those advice and motivation that you gave. Thank you very much for that, Rahym. But I want you to sum it all up and just tell me, what advice would you give if one doesn't get the successful engagement for the youth? Because, you know, considering COVID and everything, it's been very difficult. And I believe we had this question come up a lot within the last few weeks at that training session that we had. So what is one advice you would give?
So if I understand your question correctly, you're asking what advice would I give if it is that we're not able to get the level of support or from young people.
Yeah.
The truth is you have to in that instance go alone. There's something called the wilderness years of leadership, the wilderness years of advocacy, whereby sometimes you and your group are the only ones in the wilderness screaming and shouting about a particular issue because you deem it as important. And what I've realized is that history doesn't allow things to happen until its own time. But sometimes we measure our success by mass numbers, Khadija, and as opposed to our one-on-one conversations and engagements with people that we meet generally. And sometimes I don't see success as being able to sometimes get 20, 30,000, 40,000 people to understand what we say. But that there are some pivotal people that we meet every single day, that if we get them to change their minds, if we get them to understand what we're talking about, then we would have made a whole lot of difference. So, for example, while it is good to get, let's say, all the parents in this country to understand that beating a child does not make them any less troublesome, it just makes them more fearful. And that the next time they think about doing something that is bad, they're not doing it because you're not doing it because because they think it's wrong. They're not doing it because they're afraid. So if it is that you could now engage, or now, let's say, for example, you're walking down the road and you see a mother beating a child. If it is that you could now start to change the mind of that one individual, then you would have really achieved the world of good. The truth is, these individuals may be they may very well not take you on. The truth is that some individuals are steeped in their ways, but you really have to do the most that you can within the circumstances that you have. And what you must be able to always constantly ask yourself is, what is the key messaging? You don't want to just engage people just blindly. You don't want to just engage people with tidbits that you possibly get online. But what is the story that you want to be able to communicate to people when you meet them and when you share thoughts with them, so that they understand what it is that you're coming across? What is that you want to tell this young boy in your community who constantly listens to music that you think is sometimes just out of the woodworks, and who constantly speaks about people in a particular way? What is it that you want to tell your mother at home, who thinks that mental health doesn't matter to you because she's went through it all from since Adam was a boy? She went through this, she went through that, she went through poverty, etc. So she thinks when you tell her, oh, mommy, I don't feel well and I feel sick and maybe I'm depressed, she tell you, brush it all off and go to church. It's how you start to change these minds. So the long and short answer to the question is that sometimes we look for mass success. Sometimes we look for mass numbers. But our job is to change one heart and one mind at a time.
That is very, very key. Having the conversations and ensuring that people actually listen and people are willing to change their mindsets. That is definitely something that we need to work on, and people need to want to listen as well. That's the problem as well. We don't have that support and those engagement for others, you know. So I agree 100% with you on that. And my final question before I ask the audience if they have any questions is, what is the most important thing we as youth advocates should know? One thing out of everything that you said, most important thing that we as youth advocates should know.
Well, I think off the bat, the most important thing that I think we should know is really knowing in a very, very, very detailed way some of the issues that face young people. I think that is very, very important to the movement, because I've realized in the line of work that I want to do is that once you have a concrete understanding, and I'm talking about summary understanding, once you have a concrete understanding of the issues that face young people, and you also understand young people as well, then your job becomes much easier. You're able to engage with people. But also, one of the most important things as well is really being able to make yourself visible and being objective and impartial as part of your advocacy. I've realized sometimes in the region that the youth organizations seem to be annexed to other organizations that have particular objectives. And for me, I've always wondered what benefit does it do other than you just wanting to be part of a fan club with others who you believe are amazing. But the truth is, you know that, and I've realized that the harsh reality is that these people don't respect young people who are so annexed to them, because they don't see these young people as critically assessing the society and critically assessing the issues facing young people. But at the same time, the truth is that when you are that way, when you are that quote unquote troublesome individual who's always seeing the issues through the lens of, let's say, gender, or you see the issues through the lens of young people, or you see the issues through the lens of marginalized communities, you are going to get the pushback. Yeah, you are going to get people saying, but it's just that person again making noise, etc. And youth advocates normally are like that way. But for me, I think one of the most important things as well is being able to always represent the issues of young people through an objective and impartial lens. When people do well, when the government, etc., does well, you tell them that you are pleased with their work. When it is that they do bad, you equally have to be able to stand up and to be able to say, listen, I think that this approach may have been wrong. And there are many ways to do so. I think our tendency this time in the region, I agree with the approach sometimes, has always been to protest 1, protest 2, protest 3. And sometimes that really doesn't solve any of the issues that we face. But there are sometimes the boardrooms and these other places could equally work. There are sometimes the social media campaigns, among other things, will work. For me, as I said, one of the most important things really is being able to represent the interests of young people as a collective group. And there must be organizations as we continue to develop as a society that are willing to do so. There must be organizations that are willing to always stand in the vanguard and say that their voices matter, that their voices and their demographic is a demographic which matters because they have the numbers. But one of the things that we fail to do in the region as well as a youth organization is really being able to mobilize. I mean, that's a whole separate conversation, but I think being impartial, being objective, representing the interests of young people, knowing the issues, like, listen, eat, sleep, breathe the issues, and eat, sleep, breathe the solutions. We can't continue to complain. We have too much work to do.
Yes, thank you. I was just trying to make notes while you were speaking, actually, but thank you so much for that advice. Is there anyone in the audience who has any questions before we?
Yes, certainly, Khadija. I know Rahym made mention of the idea of mobilizing, and that's exactly the question I wanted to ask about. Because I know, especially on the heel of International Youth Day and the emphasis on ageism and intergenerational solidarity, I know I have this sense that young people in the region are incredibly frustrated. And so even as much as we start these advocacy campaigns and so on, the issue becomes, how do we translate that anger and frustration into action? We know that, you get the support online and so on, but does that ever materialize? And I know for young people, there's this sense that, as much noise as we make, nothing else is going to happen. What is your suggestion for us as a youth advocacy group and as a mental health organization? Essentially, what is your suggestion for us to get young people interested, number one, but also to convince them that their voice does matter on this issue and that their action can materialize into some of the initiatives and further actions that they would want to see?
David, you've asked me, I think, one of the hardest questions that I'll ever get, and I always continue to get as part of my engagements with young people like myself, because essentially the question is asking, how do you get a generation of young people who continue to, within the region, who continues to see this as the front and center of our engagement? How do you get them to understand that the issues that you are putting on the front of the table matter? For me, I've always held the view that we need to meet young people where they are. Too many times we sit within our tower, within our executive ivory towers, as I've mentioned, and we create 45, 50 policy briefs on a particular issue. And that time may very well be well spent in the community. That time may be very well spent doing the walkarounds that is necessary on schools or on the various areas where young people congregate within the country and within the region to be able to engage them. To be able to engage them, yes, not necessarily to always impose your own view of what the world should be like. But in many respects, sometimes young people are the solution to some of their issues. In many respects, sometimes young people are the spark that they're looking to ignite. And what I mean by that is sometimes your conversation with young people in the community to be able to turn their lives around, just generally to be able to, let's say, take school more seriously, to be able to enroll in a community group, to be able to enroll in youth organizations, etc. Sometimes that is what it is that we need. But on the social media front, I've always found that a very difficult thing to do as well, because you normally hear people tell you, just limit your conversations and limit your advocacy to 1 minute tidbits, etc., because the attention span of young people, all sorts of stuff. But for me, as I said, it's really meeting with young people where they are. So my young people primarily are on TikTok because of the fluidity of the videos. If it means that we have to meet them there, then we have to meet them there. If it is that we have to meet them in some of these spaces, on Instagram, etc., then we need to be able to meet them there. But equally, if it is that we need to be able to meet them, as I've said, in these physical spaces where they continually then we do so. But I think what we've attempted to do all the time is get a mass set of young people across the world to buy into one particular issue. And everybody's not going to be interested in all of the issues that we have. There are segments of young people that may very well be interested in your issue, because we haven't been able to create a society which understands that all issues are interwoven. But on this particular issue, if it is that you're able to identify individuals who are passionate, who know other people who are equally passionate as well on this issue, then the truth is you don't need everybody. Because once you have all of these individuals who are, then that drives it as much as possible. And at the same time, it creates the environment whereby you're pushing for change and you have a committed group of people who understand what it is. The truth is, as I've said, sometimes in the past, youth leaders, etc., who haven't done too well have somehow created an environment or created a psyche in people that the youth movement is no good. But the truth is, sometimes the youth movement is a continuum phase for you. Is a continuum phase for you, David. Because what has happened is that you will get the skills necessary, you will get the ideas, you will get the thoughts, you will get the spaces where what's necessary to be able to create a change in your next position. Yeah. So you may very well be, the youth movement may be a passing stage for you to be able to make the change. But what you must always be cognizant of is that when you get to these new positions, you don't abandon the movement that you were part of. And a perfect example of this that I've really adored is the St. Lucian First National Youth Council President of St. Lucia, Justice Marie Michel. Justice Marie Michel, very quickly, was the first president. He did a lot of phenomenal work and made a lot of representation on behalf of young people in an intellectual way, in the sense that he was writing a lot, he was talking a lot, he was advocating a lot. He wasn't seeing much change at times because the society in and of itself was not ready for that. But then he became a politician, and his first act was to incorporate the St. Lucia National Youth Council as an act of parliament. His second act was to be able to create a subvention for the National Youth Council. The third act was to be able to expand and create universal education for children. Because for him, the built-up frustration over the years said that, listen, when I get into the position of power, because sometimes within the positions that we are, we may not have enough power. But when we get into these positions, it's as if we have the list of 40-something or 100 items that we're going to do right away. That for me is important. I hope in some respects I answered some parts of your question.
Thank you very much, Rahym, for that. I hope, as you said, I hope David, your question was answered. So we would just like to present to you this certificate because you've taken a picture of it. So if you want us to send it to you after, we can send it to you after.
I'll send it, Rahym. Don't worry.
It just came up and I was listen. It just looked so cute. I had to.
Don't worry, we'll send it to you after. So thank you so much. This is your certificate of appreciation for sharing such important advice and ensuring that we speak up about how we feel and always be the voice that we want to be, always make the change that we need to make. So thank you very much, and you can feel free to stay on and listen to the rest of your presenters.
I definitely will. And my last thought very quickly is as I've said earlier in relation to your particular issue on mental health, you need to take an intergenerational approach to it, because young people understand it. Young people in many respects understand and they feel it as a result of the pandemic. They feel it because of what they go through on an everyday basis. But what we must do is really take that intergenerational approach. I'll stay and I have to listen to my colleagues Jamila and Firhaana, which I believe will impress you even more.
Great. Thank you so much, Rahym. And I'll pass back over to Chelsea now.
Thank you very, very much, Rahym and Khadija. Now we have Mrs. Firhaana Bulbulia. Firhaana Bulbulia is a gender and communication specialist with over 5 years working in multilateral organizations such as the United Nations, with agencies such as UNDP, UN Women, FAO, and UNICEF. She has over 10 years experience in NGO leadership, having founded the Barbados Association of Muslim Ladies. She possesses a Master's of Arts in Education, Gender, and International Development, and has worked with several local, regional, and global organizations promoting gender equality, human rights, and access to justice. Presently, Firhaana is a consultant working at the intersection of gender and development, and is also the project coordinator for U-Report Barbados. We now welcome Firhaana.
Thank you, Chelsea, and to the whole LUI community. Thank you for joining us on this evening. And also shout out to Rahym as well for such a wonderful presentation. I caught the ending of it, so I know that he would have done a really powerful job. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can get right into it. Let me make sure I'm sharing the correct screen. And you can let me know when you're able to see it. Can everyone see it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So my topic for today is from advocacy to policy. So we'll be looking a little bit at what that road looks like and really delving in a bit deeper. Just to go over very clearly the objectives of today's session, we'll seek to define what is advocacy and what is policy, explore the linkage between these two concepts. How do we measure success? How do we really understand where we're making progress and where there may be sticking points, and highlighting some potential challenges, especially for advocates. But I think also as well, we'll look a bit at some of the misconceptions around it and some of the mistakes that also come from my own lessons learned in this space. And then we'll have a little bit of a reflection and discussion. So I hope it's a lively discussion, because there will be times where I'm asking you to unmute your mic throughout the session. So before we get started, I just wanted to give a little bit of background. I know that Chelsea read my bio, and oftentimes when we read bio, it gives one picture of a presenter and usually highlights all the good things, right? But as advocates, we also have some very low points as well, and that's really important to acknowledge in this journey. So I wanted to start by saying I don't have all the knowledge. I do have some unique experiences. I have lots to learn on this journey, but I appreciate growing together with this community. So I wanted to start there. So we're going to get straight into it. So this is where you unmute your mics and you tell me what is advocacy. And I'm hoping no one says, well, I came here for you to tell me what is advocacy. Because I want to throw that question out first. What for you is advocacy? And anyone can answer.
I'll start. I'll say that advocacy is, I don't want to say what people usually say is. People usually say is giving a voice to the voiceless. But somebody told me they're not voiceless, it's just that they never had a platform to speak on certain things. Yeah, so basically, I can't use about advocating, but advocating, standing up, speaking about issues that affect persons. Yeah.
Thanks, and that's Chelsea, right? Because I can't actually see who's talking. I just want to make sure.
Chelsea.
Thank you, Chelsea. Yeah, that's a beautiful reflection as well on what advocacy is, and also what advocacy is not. You can answer the second question as well. Anyone else has any thoughts on this?
I would just add on, and this Khadija, by the way, I would just add on to just ensuring that people actually listen to you and things are actually implemented, because we advocate for a lot of things and we voice our feelings and what's not, but people don't actually listen. People don't actually take our thoughts and our considerations into process, that they don't actually move forward with it. So that would be something else as well.
Okay. Thanks for that, Khadija. We're going to discuss a little bit about that in when we measure success. What does success look like, right? So thanks for raising that. Anybody wants to share what is not advocacy? In your opinion, what is not advocacy? And you can be specific as well, if you just have an example.
I think this is David, by the way, Firhaana.
Hi, David.
I have been reflecting a lot on, because I've heard it more and more. It's not just something that you get into for the clout of it or to activate your CV. It's not just talking aimlessly about a particular topic. And it's not just a trend. It's not just something that you get into for this period of a month or 2 months and expect that all the changes that you envision will take place. In fact, as Rahym has quite lovely put it, it's a bridge. You're literally just forming a bridge, and some of these changes that you want are probably not going to materialize even within your lifetime, but at least you would have filled in that slot, and maybe somebody else can continue your work.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't put it better. You definitely raised a lot of points there that I think are pertinent, and we'll delve deeper into some of these points throughout the presentation. So I think that's a really good place to start. Definitely no wrong answers. So thank you all for sharing so openly. we'll get into the next one. So I do have a definition here, but don't feel limited to this definition that I've put here. And it's really, advocacy really involves promoting the interest or cause of someone or a group of people. And that someone could also be you, right? An advocate is someone who argues for, recommends, or supports a cause or policy. And advocacy is also about helping people and finding their voice, but also finding your voice, right? And helping yourself as well. And there are three types of advocacy in a nutshell, which is self-advocacy, individual advocacy, and systems advocacy. So self-advocacy is when you represent yourself. You have a particular need, you have a particular issue, and you speak up about it, right? And advocacy can happen in any, self-advocacy can happen in any space. It can happen in your home, with your parents, at school, with your teacher, with a friend, where you speak up about something that you're passionate about in order to make a difference or to promote, a positive outcome. Individual advocacy is when you or a group of persons advocate with a specific person or entity, right? And it's more of like a two-way sort of advocate. So for example, you are at work and a group of persons at work say, we need to go and speak to the supervisor and advocate on this particular issue, right? It could also, for example, you're a student at school and students get together and go and advocate with, for a reduction of workload with the teacher, for example. So that's individual advocacy. But what we're really looking at today is systems advocacy. And systems advocacy really has to do with shifting policy, right? Advocacy that leads directly to the introduction of new or updated policies, laws, and practices, right? So what methods of advocacy would you say in the work that maybe LUI does that you're familiar with? Which one relates most to the work that you do? And it could be a combination. Any thoughts on this?
I think we've done a lot of. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, David.
No. You go.
Wait, is my phone? Should I go? Okay. I was saying we do a lot of individual advocacy, but I think now more so we've been developing to tackle systems and changing systems. So yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you, Maurice, for that. And as organizations grow and develop, it does shift, right? Priorities shift, and you begin to see where the gaps are and where you need to prioritize and put emphasis on. So as mentioned, we're looking at systems advocacy, and systems advocacy is all about changing policies, laws, or rules that impact how someone or even yourself lives their lives, right? And these efforts can be targeted at a local, state, or a national agency. So usually persons may say governments or government agencies or government-run agencies, for example. And the focus with this type of advocacy is really changing laws. So there's systems in place that maybe don't even make sense, right? But persons are not able to act differently or do things differently or invest differently because there's hard and fast laws and policies that must be followed, right? And so these could be written or unwritten policies. These are just things that this is how we operate, and this is how we've always operated. And written policies are, of course, things that are embedded in law and very specific, whereas unwritten policies can look like culture and just how we do things and how society is organized. So how we target these issues depends on the type of problem and who has authority over the problem. That is very important to understand and question who ultimately holds the power that can make the change. And as we go on in the presentation, we'll begin to understand why on this road to policy change, understanding truly who holds the power is a vital first step to understanding or seeing how we should strategize in taking our advocacy to hard and fast policy change. So I always like to ground ourselves in the why. And I think that Chelsea, Khadija, and David spoke at the beginning about what advocacy is and what advocacy is not. And advocacy is many different things. But truly grounding ourselves in the why. Why are we advocating? Why is it such an important and critical step in securing policy change? And there are a lot of different reasons that go into this why. Looking at our historical context, looking at the social, cultural, and religious norms that came out of that, and then also the forms of discrimination and prejudice that came out of that, and the taboos, these things that all made, for example, mental health a taboo topic to talk about. So all of these come into the picture in understanding that, sometimes systems weren't built for us. The reality is they weren't. Especially within our Caribbean context and being persons of color, systems were not built for us. They were not built for us to benefit from it. So there is reason to advocate for changes to these types of systems, right? And that leads us to the question of how then do we advocate for these type of changes? And we have to ask ourselves some questions. First, who holds the power? Who leads this change? Who has the ability to, sign that paper at the end of the day to say, okay, this is going to be the new way that we're going to operate? Who is even elected and who can be elected to govern and make these types of decisions? Whose ideas, thoughts, and opinions are most valued in a particular situation and whose aren't valued? And then I have here, can you think of any more questions that we should ask ourselves when we ground ourselves in the why? And some of these questions also involve, for example, are you a woman versus are you a man? Would your opinion be valued in a certain space if you were a woman versus if you were a man? Or if you were a young person versus an older person. And these are, when we go into these types of spaces, we come from a position where, I believe as a young person, my voice is important. I believe as a person from a minority group, my voice is even more important. But when we go into spaces, that might not necessarily be how that space operates. They may not think young people's voice are important. They may think we're quite inexperienced and our realities aren't able to really give good, solid advice. So being really conscious of those things are important because then it would help us to understand how we strategize on these issues. So why do we need to advocate for policy change? And I think I made some of these points earlier where I stated systems weren't created for us. So there's need for us to advocate for these changes. The importance of diversity and inclusion, and not just diversity and inclusion of ways of living, but also mindsets and the way that we think about things. Of course, emerging issues. As the world changes, as we become more globalized, issues will come up, issues that we perhaps didn't even think about 10 years ago, that when laws and policies were crafted, how many ever years ago, it didn't take into consideration the issues of today. So advocacy for policy change is a lifelong process. We have to continuously change. And David mentioned something earlier, which is that we build on the success, or we build on those who came before us. They would have advocated and carried us a certain way. Now it's our turn to carry us to a certain way. And then those who come after will carry us further, right? And that's how it would work. Of course, ensuring all voices are heard. And that means including your own voice is heard as well. And then lastly, I think an important one is it takes partnership and not ownership. And I'll say that again, it takes partnership and not ownership. Issues, there is no single advocate who was able to conquer all challenges and achieve policy change on their own. And sometimes we don't see all the different moving parts and how they all interconnect, but how vital our part is to achieving that, but how we work in partnership knowingly or unknowingly to achieve certain changes that may occur. So we're going to talk through some of these things. Okay. So an important point is measuring success. And Khadija raised this earlier, where she said, and if I could just summarize, where she indicated that we speak up, but then it feels like no one is listening. And it feels like we don't get this change, right? And that's a really normal feeling to have as an advocate. You feel like, I've said so many times that we want this, and it feels like nothing is moving, and nothing is shifting. And we measure our success based on that. We measure our success that we want a policy, let's advocate, and we get this policy, right? And we think that this is our success, and that is how we measure ourselves against that. But I wanted to kind of take us through a different sort of approach to how we measure success. And I decided to show this different road here. It has no beginning, it has no clear end, it has many points along the way, right? And this, as advocates, we have to be able to see our journey in this way, in that we may not achieve the policy. That's the main outcome that we're aiming for, and it would be great. But before we get there, there's process, and we cannot ignore how important or valuable our inputs are towards that process. I put a little quote here that says, transformational advocates understand process, value diverse approaches, anticipate mistakes, and commit to lifelong learning and reflection. And what essentially that means is that we get it. We understand that in order for policy change to happen, there must be a process. And systems that were built were not built for it to be easy, right? Because we are, we came from colonialism. If it was easy for the working class or lower class to have inputs in policy changes, those in power would essentially not be able to have so much control, right? So it was not made to be easy, but that doesn't mean that we don't put in the effort to shift that. So we understand that, okay, although we want something and we want it now, that we have to go through the process needed and invest the time into the long haul of things. So maybe we may not achieve the policy, but what we might do is open the door for a conversation, then open the door for maybe some little forms of investment to go in towards conceptualizing around this issue. It may open the door for example, an agency to put this under its mandate and now prioritize it. And these are small steps along the way that would eventually lead to the policy that we hope for. Of course, valuing diverse approaches. There is no one way, there's no one way to doing advocacy. Advocacy can be a protest, it could be an article in the newspaper, it could be calling up your local MP, it could be writing emails, it could be forming an organization and posting important informational content every single day, it could be holding a Zoom just like this, right? There's so many different ways that you can do it, and no one is right and no one is wrong. It is just all part of the process. Anticipating mistakes. We will make mistakes along the way. We may realize that we may go gun hard for something early in the beginning. And then when new information comes, you might realize, maybe I didn't see this before. And now that I'm in it and I understand, I need to shift my approach, or maybe refine the request that I'm asking for, because now I understand maybe the limitations or the restraints, or even I understand how this is viewed now based on this new information I'm receiving. So there may be mistakes. You have to anticipate it, even from the persons who may be leading you. They may make decisions based on the information they have and then go back and think, okay, maybe I need to change this around a bit. And then lastly, committing to lifelong learning and reflection along the journey. As advocates, we have to constantly be learning and increasing our knowledge on what we're advocating for, and looking at the emerging issues We can't just stop at one spot and be like, hammer, 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 and not realize actually there are other nails along the stretch that we haven't considered. So learning and reflection is important. Common mistakes and misconceptions that persons may have, and this is very specific to personal advocacy or even organizational advocacy towards policy change. So some of these I would have mentioned before as I talked through, but I thought I would pinpoint some. Firstly, looking at advocacy at face value, in that you see advocacy as one particular way of doing things, where if we don't have a protest out on the streets, we ain't advocating. That's it, full stop. Like, that's the only way that we can do it. So definitely advocacy is lots of different things, and we have to be able to appreciate the different approaches that persons have. Sometimes, when we're brainstorming ideas, persons come with different ideas, and then we think, what, if we do it this way, or if we do it your way, it's not going to make a difference. Whereas it's about a combined effort, and second one is not following up. Like David said at the beginning, we may talk about something so much for a month, and then we may send a letter or a policy brief to a person in power, and then we never follow up. And then we say to ourselves, they don't care, they never wrote me back. I feel like, we're a failure. They never got back to us. And sometimes legitimately, they may not. They may have seen it and just thought this is not an important issue, or oftentimes it's not that. It's that persons are so busy. Remember, you're not the only person going to that person in power to ask, can we have this done, or can we talk about this? So our role is really to follow up, to do the work, to be as specific as possible with the ask. What do you want this person to do? Very specifically, so that they're clear in where they stand and what is required of them and what you expect of them, and also what you bring to the table to get this particular issue sorted. Second is not taking a break and not recognizing that advocates need breaks. Fighting and talking and dealing with the issue, it doesn't happen overnight. We don't get success overnight. But we have to be able to prioritize our mental health and take breaks, especially if, we're campaigning hard on social media, if we're campaigning hard face-to-face. Take a break, disconnect. This issue is important, but more importantly is your mental health in order to sustain advocacy on this issue. So definitely take breaks. Checking boxes instead of changing mindsets. Advocacy always has to involve element of changing a mindset. There is a reason why this issue is existing and persisting. So, and it has to do, again, like I said earlier, historical context, socio-cultural context, religious context. So we have to understand, before we're able to even get that policy change, how do we change mindsets? How do we change behaviors that will then lead eventually to this change that we need? And more often than not, the changing of mindsets and behaviors, if we get that done, the advocacy for the policy probably wouldn't need to happen, because it would just be something natural, because we've now changed the viewpoints of people to be able to be more consistent with what we want to achieve, which would be positive outcomes in specific areas. I think I mentioned not appreciating varied approaches, so I won't go too much more into detail in that one. Not asking who I need and who else. As I said, because advocacy looks like different things, right? It may look like community work, it may look like writing policy briefs, it may look like public speaking on local platforms and on TV. We may not have all of those skill sets. Most likely than not, we don't have all of those skill sets, but we may feel that we have to fulfill all these roles. expanding teams and finding persons who have those skill sets and harnessing those skill sets are really important. Who else do I need to be here to talk about this issue? Who is the expert that I can call on and can fulfill this particular role? Not investing time in building the capacity, especially of your team, to advocate effectively. And capacity could mean things like having effective public speakers, having effective researchers or persons who are critical thinkers, being able to write very clearly and concisely on a particular issue and be able to then communicate that to different audiences. So that those type of very technical skill sets. Yeah, you may have someone who has loads of passion and feels passionately about issue, but that has to be able to translate into very specific things that will move the needle. And that may mean having multiple persons on the team, which is why I think today's session is really good, because you're building those technical skill sets now that will move you to the next level. And then the last one is personal reflection and a commitment to lifelong learning, which is what I mentioned earlier. We have to be constantly reflecting on where we're going, the why, how are we gonna get this done, and how are we measuring our success? Where are we a year ago? Where were we compared to where we are today? And I always love to see the LUI post on Instagram and just how many people are sharing this post. So yeah, we may not have a comprehensive mental health policy yet, but look at how many persons are now becoming interested and following the page and gaining information about this content, and possibly changing their mindsets on issues. Because I know from myself, there are posts that I've seen on the page, and then I thought to myself, I never thought about this in this particular way. Now I have a different viewpoint about this particular issue or this particular area. So that is important as well. Those successes are important. So yeah, I wanted to share that. I also want to kind of segue a little bit here and say that, working with organizations, sometimes what we see in the process, what we don't see in the process, can make us feel that, we're not being impactful. Like if you're the person who constantly, your role in the organization is just to, for example, write newspaper articles, for example, or web stories on different topics, and that's what you're doing day in and day out, you may begin to feel, am I really making a difference? Is this really making a difference? And you may say, you know what, this organization isn't making a difference because we're not getting the policy. I'm doing this every single day and it's not getting me anywhere, right? But as part of the larger picture or part of the larger process, we have to be able to do small things that may seem meaningless to reach a much bigger outcome. And as leaders in organizations, we have to be able to bring persons together and help them to see that bigger picture and see the value in just maybe what may seem like a small task to them to this much bigger and broader picture. So grounding ourselves again, just taking a moment to ground ourselves in this journey of moving from advocacy to policy, is that at the heart of it, we always have to value people and their lived experiences in whatever we do. And grounding ourselves in that constantly allows us to keep checking ourselves, keep checking this journey that we're on, helping us to measure our personal success, but then also our organizational success. How are we valuing people? How are we valuing their lived experiences? And how are we making that better, better for our communities, right? I am coming to the end of my presentation, so I wanted to offer a little word of caution to be wary. As advocates, we have to be wary of one very big elephant in the room, and that is tokenism on the road to policy change. And the question is, why? Why do we have to worry about tokenism? And if you do know what tokenism is, I would just like you to raise your hand, just using the Zoom function. Just raise your hand, just say, I know what tokenism is. I'll give a definition on the next slide, but I just kind of want to get a sense of if you know what it is, right? And why do we have to be wary of tokenism? Because we may feel our advocacy is leading us to be more included at decision-making tables. But in fact, it may just be a distraction, right? From our bigger picture and our bigger aim. And how do we absolutely know this for sure? How do we know if we're at the table because the persons that are bringing us to the table are committed to the change that we want to see? Or is it because they want to just check this box and say that they did this, right? How can we be wary of that in our process towards policy change? And I have two definitions here. The first is tokenism. So tokenism is making only a symbolic effort to be inclusive to members of a minority, marginalized, or underrepresented groups in order to give an appearance of equality or inclusion. And this can go for not just equality or inclusion, but give the appearance of dealing with an issue or addressing an issue, right? It's just symbolic. And there are ways to know if persons are being symbolic or being genuine in their efforts to change, or just simply wanting to distract us from keeping noise, right? I do have a definition of inclusion that I wanted to share. It's a definition that I would have penned myself. And it is, inclusion is shifting or changing norms, structures, practices, behaviors, and mindsets to promote deepened understanding, valuing, and connection between diverse people that expand individual agency and power. And I wanted to share this because if on this road to advocacy, we're going to meet lots of people who support us, people who don't support us, people who bring us to the table and say, I believe in this, but are there buts attached to that? Are there conditions attached to that? If when you leave that table, is your agency and power expanded or is it diminished? Do they want to provide a stepping stone here, but then a leash somewhere else? Are they truly valuing your connection to the issue and the lived experiences that you bring to the table? Or are they seeking to sort of promote their own ways of thinking and get you to change your mind on the way that you see things? How are they coming from this topic? Are they coming from a position of wanting to learn? Or are they coming from a position of wanting to show that there is power in the position that they hold, right? And there's ways that we can deal with this. Questioning the process, questioning yourself personally, but also questioning the people around you and the persons at the table. What is this process going to look like? How are we moving from point A to B to C to D? What is my responsibility in this process? And define that responsibility for yourself because you know what you bring to the table. Are there clear follow-up actions? And is there a plan for follow-up? That is very important. Can I call you? How can I reach you? How easily accessible will you be? What is the timelines for these things that we've discussed? That's very important. How should we follow up? How regularly are we going to meet to follow up on this issue? Investing your energy wisely. When you realize that, this is just a distraction, I need to change, I need to pivot. And I wanted to share this from the point of view that sometimes we're very invested with going straight to the top, right? Of an organization, of a government agency, straight to the top, because we feel like because of this hierarchy in Caribbean society, if we go to the top, if we go to this person who holds this symbolic seat of power, we will get the change. What we may neglect is all the people who are part of the process of change that actually do the work, that also have to be invested in this issue to be able to facilitate the change that we want to see. So we have to be able to understand that and invest our energy wisely. So as part of the questioning process, ask, okay, you you may be, for example, a minister. You have many different issues. Who are you delegating to deal with this while you, for example, maybe traveling, maybe in meetings? Who is it? Who is the person who's really going to move this forward within your ministry, right? For example, stay grounded in your why and do not compromise your values. And I want to talk a little bit about compromise. So in advocacy, we start off with a very clear idea of where we want to go. We want this, we want it done this way, and we want it done within this timeline, right? The root of that is our value. It may be coming from the position that mental health, for example, is an important and critical topic, and people need access to mental health services, right? For example, how we want to achieve that, maybe something that we have already a clear idea about. But in the process, we may have to shift. Shifting is very important, being able to be flexible in how we achieve that. That doesn't mean that you're compromising your values and what you believe. It means that you're now understanding a bigger picture. Maybe understanding the limitations in resourcing. You may be understanding the limitations in relation to how fast things can move. And then maybe having to think, okay, we may not achieve this within the next 6 months, but we could achieve a smaller set in the next 6 months. I'm willing to be flexible and work on this here, right? And get to this point so that we can continue to build. That doesn't mean you're compromising the entire issue. You're looking to be flexible on it. And that will happen often. And the last three is, of course, speak up, educate. Tokenism often happens because persons are not well educated. They come with perceptions and biases already. And it's our responsibility to be able to shift those and educate persons differently. Reflect constantly. I said that many times, and reflection is important. And most importantly, build others, because like David said, we came through the efforts of others. Persons will build on our efforts. The only way that we're going to sustain the process is if we, in our journey, also build others to kind of take the handles and take the ropes from us. When we need to take those breaks, or when we need to say, you know what, I've reached this point in the journey, and now it's time for someone else to take this up, and I play a more supporting role. So I did have a case study, but I think our time may be a bit limited, so I won't go to that case study today. I'll probably just share it with Chelsea and David so that they can share it with you for thoughts. And if you have any thoughts on the case study, you could always feel free to reach out to me. But I'll go now to questions just to be considerate of Jamila's time as well for her presentation.
Thank you so very much, Firhaana. Thank you so much.
Okay, so I have a question. What is one takeaway you want us as youth advocates to know moving forward with advocating? One takeaway from your entire presentation.
One takeaway, reflection. Most importantly, consistently just keep reflecting on your journey and building your capacity to lead. Don't ever get comfortable with where you're at. Consistently keep reflecting and learning and growing.
That's definitely important. I will ask the audience if they have any other questions, or I'll ask the one I have. Anyone? David seems like he has a question.
Yeah, Firhaana, I probably will ask every single panelist a similar question regarding mobilization. Again, I think for us, and I will be frank here, we started in an online environment. We started during COVID, and so for us, it's now we have to take that movement to go towards getting more into the community and so on. Any tips on how to mobilize, particularly young people? And then perhaps you can also give some insight on how do we convince, I know Rahym made the point in terms of relating to mental health, that it is an intergenerational issue, and he's absolutely right. Any tips on how we can convince older people that they have a stake in this issue as well?
Yeah, sure. So partnerships. I'm a big advocate of partnerships. to achieve goals. We cannot work in silos. And I know LUI is also very big on partnerships as well, considering the work we've done through U-Report and other entities as well. The only way that we're going to reach more people is if we tap into the networks of different organizations. And that's the only way that we can carry forward, messages and so on. It is through very clear, concrete partnerships with different entities. The second question was on intergenerational discussion. This is actually quite a big question, and I'm not sure if you're asking me because you think I'm old, David, or because you think I'm young. So which position are you?
Only on the premise you have been doing this for a while.
Okay, perfect. I just needed to know. So one of the things that, or one of the models that I've seen that has worked is where there is a level of two-way conversation in sort of a safe space, starting very specifically with connecting through experiences, right? And being able to have mediator, not a mediator, because it's not like a counseling session, but someone who is skilled in mediation who will be able to draw out those points. So for example, the old people will say, and I hear this often, well, back in my day, I used to get beat and I turn out real good. I turn out fine, right? If you have a space where you're able to probe into that a little bit more, well, how did that make you feel, when you were beaten? Or, how did you feel seeing others be beaten? And you draw on the emotion of things. It creates more connection than if we just say, y'all advocating for this, but there's no connection to the experiences and emotion behind that. And I find that often happens that we see persons advocating. I don't know why David is so passionate about mental health, right? I think maybe he's just passionate about it, but there could be an experience behind that I may connect more with when I hear it, as opposed to just being told mental health is important. We have to talk about it, right? So I found that model of experiential. I can't say the word. That model of connecting through experiences and shared emotions is a very powerful way to sort of tailor intergenerational conversations. Yeah.
I love that. Thanks so much.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Firhaana. I have one last question to ask. Well, not really a question, more like a statement. Well, kind of is a question. Can you share with us some motivational words or a piece of advice you would use when you feel like your voice is not being heard? Something that drives you to make sure that let me continue doing what I'm doing because I don't really care what other people say. So what advice would you give us?
This is a hard one, but I would say that I have some very close friends and family, the people who understand you and can talk you through it and help you out of that sort of space, is so that kind of community of people that you trust and you can go to that help to keep you motivated is really important when working on this, and who can also, when you need to take a break, that you're confident that they could continue even in your absence or your taking a step back. So I would say definitely surround yourself with people who support you and give love unconditionally.
Yeah, that's very, very important, having a support system, for sure. Okay, thank you very much, Firhaana, for that. We also do have something special for you. I'll wait for Chelsea to pull it up. We also do have a certificate for you.
Thank you.
So on behalf of the LUI team, we would like to thank you very much for giving us some very important information that we need, for sure. Always, ensuring that we have the community, the support system, all of that. That is very, very important. But yeah, so we're hoping that we can also get your presentation after the end of this because it's very detailed and it's very important for us. All of the little advice and that you gave us what's not, we're hoping we can get that after. So thank you very much, and we'll send you your certificate as well.
Thank you. Thank you all for having me. Take care.
I'll pass back over to Chelsea now.
Thank you so very much. Okay, so while we await our last speaker, remember I had some polls and they weren't proper, but I changed them, I fixed them. So we're gonna try it again. Yes, this one. Let's launch this one to see. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So one person, two, come on, we have 8 people in, well, minus me will be 7. So are you still here?
Yes, I'm still here. It's not letting me choose something, but I'm still here.
Who's hungry?
Yeah, it's not letting me choose either.
Really?
Mhm.
Okay, so what do you choose then verbally?
Oh yes.
Oh yes. I
Okay.
ate, so I'm not hungry anymore.
Okay, and I have one last one. Let's see. I guess I can share the results. Okay, and then the last one. There we go.
Oh, already?
Oh, already for real.
Okay, so I'm gonna assume that nobody else is getting to like click it in. That's fine. Okay. Okay, share results and then stop sharing. Okay. The polls worked fine. Okay. Next we have Miss Jamila. Now, well, her bio says Jamila Hollingsworth, but I'll say Hollingsworth Brooms, I guess. I don't know whichever one she can let us know. Jamila Hollingsworth is the founder of the HR Boss, a Caribbean millennial career and HR consultancy with readership over 27 countries. The HR Boss was founded with a mission of helping Caribbean millennials be the bosses they were destined to be. The Harvard-trained leadership communicator has traveled to several Caribbean territories, delivering career seminars and empowering Caribbean millennials to take charge of their careers. In 2018, Jamila was nominated to attend the International Visitors Leadership Program in Washington, D.C., in recognition of her contribution to entrepreneurship in Barbados in her 2 years of operation. She was also selected by the Inter-American Development Bank in Washington, D.C., as the top 30 under 30 Caribbean changemakers in the Caribbean and the USA. She is the first Barbadian to receive this award. Jamila is a qualified HR practitioner with over 10 years of experience in the US, Canada, United Kingdom, and Europe. She was recently promoted to the position of Director of Human Resources and Corporate Service at the Barbados Tourism Marketing, Inc. At present, she serves as the President of the Barbados Public Workers Cooperative Credit Union Limited, Second Vice President of the Barbados Youth Development Council, and board member of the National Sports Council. Jamila's mantra in life now is, what doesn't kill me, better run. Jamila, over to you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I was popping in and out for the entire time because I'm actually on auntie duty, so I'm in the car, just looking a bit rough. Chelsea, I think Kobe would have sent over my presentation. So if you could assist me by pulling it up, that is great. I know that we started early today, so I appreciate everybody for remaining on the call because Rahym is a true politician. And I know Rahym, and his true politician style had us going for a while. That's my friend, I can say that. All right, so my segment is going to be to the point, and I really want to give some practical advice about how I manage workplace conflict, especially in my role as a HR manager or director of HR. Conflict is something that we have to deal with on a daily basis in our lives, with our families, at work, in teams at UE, we cannot escape conflict because people wake up and they choose violence and they choose drama every time. So although you may exist in your bubble of peace, you have somebody who has an untidy soul that will just try to impart their chaos on you. So even if you are zen and you did your devotions and you're in a happy place, you had a restful weekend, there's somebody in a group project out there not pulling their weight and wants to impart on you Monday morning that they haven't done their share of the assignment, right? So how do we effectively manage conflict in teams, in the workplace, at school, at church, in organizations that we serve? Next slide, Chelsea. All right. So like I said, it's inevitable. So the only thing we could do is develop coping mechanisms that could help us not lose it mentally, not lose it emotionally, and kind of maintain a balance. Next. So you're probably asking, how does conflict occur? I don't know who came up with the word conflict. The person is probably a genius, but conflict happens when your expectations and somebody's expectations don't align. There is a misalignment in terms of your standard of doing business, your standard of doing work, your standard of communication, and somebody else's standard. So you have to accept and appreciate that you will be placed in teams with people who do not share the same standard as you in terms of work, in terms of communication, in terms of political, the way you won't see eye to eye on everything. And that is what creates a clash, which we call conflict. Next, Chelsea. So these are some types of examples of conflict in the workplace. Like I said, there are expectations that don't align. You could also have perceived inequalities or inequities in terms of resources. There could be mismanagement of resources, mismanagement of change that may cause an uncomfortable situation at work. There could be behaviors that you don't necessarily resonate with, that challenges the way that you think and you view yourself, that could cause a conflict. Also, we mentioned poor communication earlier and misunderstanding general benchmarks, deadlines, the way of doing things. All of these create conflict and tension and drama in the workplace. And of course, the most common one, which is personality differences. So you cannot necessarily change somebody's personality. There's some people who, we all come from different upbringing. We all come from different homes. We all come from a different way of doing things. So we cannot assume that people know, or people are raised the way you are, or people have the same values that you hold. So the first thing for me with managing conflict is understanding that everybody does not share the same value system that I do, and everybody doesn't have the same benchmarks or hold themselves the same benchmarks that I hold myself. So when you have that understanding and you go into a team setting or a workplace setting or even a management position, you already come out knowing, okay, I'm a little overachiever and everybody is not me. So in the event that somebody doesn't pull their weight on a group project, I may have to allocate time to take up their slack, right? Or I may have to call them out on not performing on a project. Or I may have to exclude myself from doing team initiatives with them if it's an organization, because I know they overpromise and underdeliver, right? So the first thing is to acknowledge that everybody's value system is not yours. Everybody wasn't raised like you, and to understand the differences that can happen and have a contingency plan. Next, Chelsea. So the second thing for me is understanding how conflict affects you, either mentally, emotionally, or physically, right? So mentally, conflict is stressful. Nobody likes to be arguing back and forth on a team call. Nobody likes to be arguing in a workplace with their colleague or their boss or even my direct reports. I don't like to be arguing. I'm a peaceful person. But conflict is mentally and emotionally draining. And the reason why it's draining is because there's not always a meeting of the minds. So although you talk to people, you would like a equitable resolve, some people just like violence, right? There's some that exist, they love the comment, they love the hype, they love the drama. I was telling somebody yesterday, Twitter is so chaotic, right? If you're not careful, you see, especially Sunday Twitter, Sunday Twitter, something always popping off. And if you're not careful, your energy and your mental could be sucked into this vacuum of toxicity because people live to just be toxic on Twitter, right? So the first thing for me is understanding how conflict affects you. If you know that you are empath and you take on everything, if you have a disagreement with somebody, or if you have this wall that you're meeting with like a team member, you have to know what is the best way to protect your mental health. Is it just to do the assignment on your own? Is it just to get past the assignment and just disassociate yourself from the person? Is it, if it's a colleague and you have to work with them, is it that you sit at your desk and just block them out? What is the best way that I could deal with this conflict so that I could protect my mental health, that I could protect my energy, protect my energy. The second thing is, does conflict affect you physically? Because some people, yes, it will affect them emotionally, but physically, there are results to show that some people are, I have colleagues, I have employees that take sick leave because they're exhausted from dealing with drama. So people get sick leave for stress. There is hypertension. I know David is a medical student, but hypertension is not only caused by lifestyle practices around diet and exercise, but it's very much so caused from stress. And that stress is not only environmental from things that you may be going through, but that sometimes that stress is team related, it's self-induced stress, right? So you want to identify, how does this affect me mentally? 1, 2, is it affecting me physically? Am I developing hypertension? Is it, if you're female, is it that I'm producing a lot of cortisol that could lead to other related issues and like PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome? Is it that I am placing my body under stress that creates a volatile environment that will cause other issues, long-term health effects, right? The third thing is, I have to figure out, is the conflict hampering my ability to produce? So am I letting the conflict consume me to the point that my standard of work declines because I am consumed by this toxic thing, right? So 1, you address your mental. How do you protect it? How do you protect your energy? 2, is it physically affecting me to the point that I'm sick, or staying in that situation will cause long-term damage to my health? And 3, I have to analyze for myself if this conflict is worth, if it's hampering my overall productivity levels, right? So I have some, go back, Chelsea. I have some overall points here that shows that conflict is directly linked, not just to mental stress, to absenteeism, to employee turnover. There's some people that walk out a job with no job offer in hand because that's it, that's a wrap. I will find something, I will be a writer, I will travel the world because I am unwilling to let my mental health go, or to I'm unwilling to put myself in a place of high functioning depression because I just cannot do this, right? And I know a lot of my colleagues who are overachievers that they're highly functioning depressed people. So they're functioning, they're people think that they're winning on the outside because they're getting promotions, but inside they are conflicted and they're highly functioning depressed people. Has anybody ever heard of the term highly functional depressed people? Yeah, everybody. Khadija, David.
Yep. Sometimes I feel that I fall into that category because
if you've been to University of West Indies, I'm sure that you've been diagnosed with that once in your life, right?
Yeah,
so we're all
definitely.
For sure. Most of us are highly functionally depressed people, right? The second thing is, there is a terminology going around now about silent quitting, where people are they're showing up to work every day, they're doing their work, but they're working like 8 to 5, right? So they're performing at high rates, but only working 8 to 5. I mean, they're calling this the silent quitting or quiet quitting. And the whole term is coined around people being fed up of their working environments, or people being fed up of their teams, and they're willing to do not the bare minimum. They're doing their jobs, they're doing it well, but they're not giving you anything outside the 8 hours. Because in their mind, I just doing what I gotta do good or consistently or excellently, and that's it. That's a wrap. I ain't giving you a minute over 5 o'clock, right? But you could Google it and do some research, and see what this whole rave is now about. Quiet quitting, right? Next slide, Chelsea. Okay, so we gotta find solutions because we already established earlier that we can't avoid conflict. Next slide. So I have some solutions here. You have to communicate clearly to people what your boundaries are, because people is try you when they don't know that you gangster, right? So you have to clearly communicate to people what it is that I will tolerate and what I will not tolerate. Me, I do not tolerate people disrespecting my time. That's a non-negotiable for me. I have limited time. I do a lot of things, so don't disrespect my time. That's something that I will not do. The second thing for me is if we have an agreement on, we make an agreement around a particular project, or you are supposed to meet a particular deliverable. If you don't deliver it, I'm not re-entering another project with you if I can help it. I mean, sometimes the groups are formed for you, but if I can help not putting on an event with you or going forward with something that I can help and control, I am not doing it. So sometimes you have to establish clearly what are your boundaries, what things perplex you, and what you will absolutely not deal with. The second thing is you got to ensure that your employees are accountable for resolving conflict. So if you go up in a management position, everybody's the one run to the manager office or your principal office to complain for each other. Y'all are big people, and some of them are big people with kids, right? Yeah, make sure you keep your employees accountable for resolving their own issues. I, as an HR director, I can't tell you how much work I get to do at work because everybody always in my office quarreling about something. You believe that David don't wash up his lunch container? He's left it in the fridge till 4 o'clock. Who cares? Probably David's wife washes the dish for him when he gets home. How is that your concern, right? So make sure you stamp out like gossip and make sure you stamp out like conflict brewing from the time it comes to your attention. If it is that you are on a level, like a line level employee, and you realize that there are certain people that exist to create conflict, try to ensure that you avoid those people. And if you can, the Bible tells you showing the very appearance of evil. If you can't avoid them people, just make sure that you do what you're supposed to do by the policy and keep your manager involved, right? Number 3, do not ignore conflict, right? Because when you ignore conflict or you ignore issue, it worsens. Like I said, David's a medical student. If you have a medical issue and you ignore it, over time it becomes worse or it might be incurable, right? So you want to make sure you identify the root of what's causing the conflict and identify a way to deal with it or stamp it out. Number 4, you have to seek to understand the emotional undertones of an employee or your colleague. There are some people that don't have home training. There's some people that just don't know any better. And like we said earlier, it's being emotionally intelligent to understand who knows the difference and to understand who generally don't know the difference, and being able to move accordingly or to school them on how things are supposed to be, right? So you have to improve your emotional intelligence. And lastly, you have to keep in mind your approaches to resolving conflict and don't become a problem yourself, because sometimes by sitting and allowing things to happen around us, sometimes we are sucked into the cycle of conflict. We allow it to happen. We see people doing foolishness, don't call them out. We allow people to take advantage of us time after time, project after project. And that can't really be a sensible thing, to let people take advantage of you over and over again, right? So we need to be part of the solution and absolutely not a problem. Chelsea? All right, so things to know. So a well-functioning team or workplace environment, it comes all down to respect and boundaries, like I was talking earlier. We can't, yes, we would not always agree on certain things, but there must be a borderline general respect or value system. Respect in terms of how we communicate to each other, how we meet deadlines, how we accept that the project will work out. There must be a borderline respect for colleagues. So normally when people are in conflict, you tend to find a disrespectful line in terms of people using condescending tones. They might be flippant, people might be arrogant, people might try to get the upper hand over the colleague or the team member, and that absolutely cannot happen, right? So you must ensure that you reinforce your boundaries. Next slide. And this is vice versa, not just an employee to a colleague or employee to a boss. There's some bosses that are out of order too. So you as a employee or a young person, you have to establish who you can take. Don't go in a workplace and expect to take people cursing at you and being completely mean to you. I worked for a company probably like 10 years ago where I had to experience a boss cursing at me, and I left the company because I know what I wasn't willing to take as an employee. I wasn't willing to take somebody cursing at me using expletives, right? If I make a mistake, I'm new to school. I appreciate guidance. I appreciate coaching. I appreciate mentoring. But what I will not tolerate is you using expletives, right? That's not my way of doing business, right? So I think once you let people slide once or twice, they think that you accept and they're comfortable with it. It's same thing like harassment or sexual harassment. Once you let people slide in the workplace once or twice, they think that you're comfortable with it, and this is the way that you do business as well, right? So you have to articulate how you feel about it. So conflict management training is what we normally advocate for in HR. I'm not sure what your organization offers the people in terms of support, but I would suggest doing some conflict management training online. We don't always perfect this thing overnight, right? So we may need some expert help on conflict management training. So professionally, I do disciplinary hearings. I just give people warning letters. I just fire people. And that's not necessarily like my favorite part of the job, but it comes with territory. And most of the times, like we practice in Barbados something called progressive discipline, which we just don't move and terminate you. There's like a verbal warning and a first warning, a second warning, which is progressively giving you an opportunity to correct your action, right? And I think in Barbados, a lot of people do not understand the benefits of progressive discipline. So the first time they hear about disciplinary meeting, they run and go get the union or they run and go and get a lawyer because they don't think that they are to be disciplined, or they don't think that they are to be held accountable for their actions, right? So I would suggest if you guys want to enter HR or a management position, that you get some kind of conflict management training. Next slide. All right, so the way forward. So like I said before, you have to establish your communication. Make your communication clear, interactive, set boundaries for how you want to be communicated to. You don't want to expletives, you want people to be clear, you want to be communicated via email and not WhatsApp, calling. Like for me, do not call me before 7 o'clock in the morning. I find it highly disrespectful and inappropriate. If you call me after 9, I find I'm a married woman. You can't be calling me after 9 and my husband's in bed looking at me like, what is so important that this person has to call you at 9 o'clock at night, right? So you have to set your boundaries to make it clear to people. This is the medium of communication I prefer. I prefer emails for business. I prefer calls for business, or I prefer to be communicated through WhatsApp or Instagram or whatever. So make it clear. Second thing is trust, right? I feel like when you trust people with your value system or your emotions, you trust that they won't hurt you, right? And I think a major part of conflict is two people trying to get their difference, two people trying to understand each other and get their differences out and not doing it effectively, right? So like I have there, the absence of trust among employees and managers compromises and breaks down the communication because people don't trust each other. So guess what? The rumor mill starts spinning. So I tell David, yo, David, I be on Chelsea on this matter, and she really ain't get where you're coming from. And I really think that Chelsea's slow, and that's how the whole breakdown in trust happens, because you start by talking Chelsea, and then it lowers Chelsea's trust of you and lowers your credibility. Number 3, ethics. I find a lot of people are willing to do anything to get ahead in life now, and that doesn't work in the long run. It really doesn't, right? And I think for me as a young manager, the way I've gone ahead quickly is to be upfront, to overproduce, over deliver, and to maintain a good moral compass. And I think my integrity is really what's carried me forward. I think when you're willing to do shady things and people observe that you do it to other people, in the back of their head, they're like, but she might do this to me. So, I mean, it's always a question mark in their minds if you will do this to them, right? So my suggestion to you is always try to practice a good business ethics and good business relationships and have clear, clean motives in terms of how you go about doing business. And lastly, be fair, man. You want people to be fair to you, be fair to other people, and pay it forward. If you can't, even if the person is being nasty to you and you are fair and you're honest and you practice good ethics, it may not come back to you now, but trust. In a few years, that you've paid for would come back on you. I promise. I promise. Next slide. All right. So I have some more breakdown here. Empathy, we talked about this earlier, being sensitive and clear. We talked about setting clear expectations. We talked about conflict resolution, and we talked about beliefs and perceptions. Right. Next slide. All right. So that's the end of my presentation. I hope it was helpful, and I hope it wasn't that long to bore you guys. Any questions?
Thank you, Jamila. Wow. I mean, like, I just surprised with all the information you just gave us, and I don't have a job, so I can't really relate to that aspect. But with school and all of that, you can relate to that. You know, working in groups is always difficult because someone doesn't pull their weight, and then you have to pull all the weight, and then it ends up being a point like, all right, if you ain't pulling that weight, I done with it. So who gonna do the work? You know, it got to a point too when you mentioned the depression thing that you would have had in secondary school or what's not. It happened to me when it was an assignment that I was doing at uni. I was like, you know what? I get into stressed out, I depressed to hell with that assignment. So I didn't do it because your mental health always comes first. You always need to check yourself and make sure you're good mentally, because if you're not, then how can you progress? So I don't necessarily have any questions, but I do thank you for what you shared. I don't know if anyone has any questions, but you were very clear to me. So David has a question, it seems.
Yeah, you know, I always have a question. Jamila, thank you so much for a very insightful presentation. I just have one question, and because I know how our particular organization is set up, it's very family-centered and very friend-centered. And I think that in itself brings its own issues. So do you have any specific advice for how do you manage conflict which arises when the people around you or who are working alongside you are very close to you or like your friends? Any specific advice for that?
I think if you love me, you respect me. Yes. I think even I was talking to my husband about this, right? He has a nasty habit of making like booking me for stuff and I don't know, right? So he would book me for stuff and then I would just see it in my calendar and I'd be like, when does this happen? Like, I wanted a free day off, but he's like, no, you could do this. And although he helps by respectfully by doing research and stuff like that, I still feel as though like that's like crossing a boundary. So this is something that I had to make very clear. Like, if I'm booking something, please, if you're booking something, this is especially when he was at BCC, please run it by me first, you know? I think family and friends, they know you, so they try to push the line a little bit because they feel like you can understand, but you gotta be firm where you know, even with family. I think you gotta be firm in your no. I think the people that push you the most are your family and friends. And even when it comes to like borrowing money, if it comes to doing things for church or doing things, they try to guilt trip you, fam. They try to guilt trip you. So I think for me, I am very firm on my no, even if it's my mom. If I reserve a Sunday for myself and I mean it's no though, you can see me tomorrow because when I'm burnt out, there's nobody around me to help me when I'm burnt out. When I'm mentally done from studying, for those who don't know, I'm a full-time law student, right? Law in Milwaukee Park, right? So when I at school and I am done and I work full-time as well and I'm mentally exhausted, I need to recharge. So nobody's there at night with me when 2-3 o'clock in the morning, I have to study till 3, get up at 6 and go to work, go to school face to face, and then come back and do it. Nobody's there in the wilderness. So I have to do what I have to do to preserve my mental health. And if I tell you no, you get vexed or I sue you, you get police tomorrow. That's just how I roll. I firm no. Because when I burnt out, ain't nobody there with me.
I appreciate how direct and frank you were on that topic, and I tend to agree. But yeah, I think sometimes we find that hard because we're afraid of disappointing people. But I do agree with you that you have to prioritize your own mental health and your own wellness in general, if you're going to be of any use to anybody else. Yeah, that was my only question. Thanks so much.
Yeah,
Was that Rahym saying? Was that Rahym saying?
He called not Kobe. He said, "Oh, Kobe."
No, boundaries are extremely important. That's something that stuck out to me the whole your entire presentation. Setting boundaries for yourself, even setting boundaries for your family. You know when to say no. Always remember when to say no, because you're gonna end up exhausting yourself. Especially knowing that like school is starting back for certain people and stuff. If you gotta take a break from your organizations, take a break. Nobody ain't gonna beat you up because you took a break, and you have to respect that for the person, because at the end it's their time that they're putting towards. It's their time that they're giving you. It's not you taking time from them, if that makes sense. So Chelsea has her hand raised. I don't know if she has a question to ask.
Yeah. I guess to like follow on from on David, because I feel like David was probably kind of during that me too. Like when we first started out, it's like how do you not get offended? Because for me, I had to, because obviously working with David, there's both the personal and the professional aspect, right? So like, I mean, I would try not to, like, I would try not to, but I would still get sometimes offended if he says something like early up. It was like probably design something, like something like a that would come up, and it's just like I know he wants what's the best, but I felt offended, although it wasn't directed at me personally. It was for LUI. So like, do you have any like suggestions or tips for like how to like distinguish? Because obviously it's like the person is still your friend, the person is still your family, but in that capacity, it's like, let's get the job done. All right. So how are you able to like distinguish that and like, not get
business
offended?
is business and pleasure is pleasure, right? For me. So when I'm doing business or if I'm doing charitable work, people know I don't mix business and pleasure. So if my husband and I, we run a business together, and when we talk in business, it's very much Mr. Brooms, and it's very much this is the task. It's no I didn't meet the deadline, babe. That's not it. It's business is business. So I think from a friendship perspective or relationship wise, if you love me, you will respect my boundaries, or you respect deadlines, or you respect the business, right? So I feel like we shirk on our friends and family, but then we get to people workplace with people that we don't know, and we put an extra effort for them, right? So I think it's just a matter of respect, right?
Hi, Bruce.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you, Jamila. I think Chelsea and I have worked that out over time. And so that's why sometimes I prefer to have certain conversations in the chat versus in our personal chat. So you keep business and pleasure separate. So yeah, definitely agree.
Anyone else has anything to say? Any comments, questions, or no? Okay, then Jamila, we have something for you as well. I just want to know before we think, was Kobe there the whole time? Did he hear everything you said?
No, he can't
shut up.
Wait, you was talking about me?
Yeah.
Oh no.
That's okay. What was said in here will stay in here. It's a safe space. Your mental health matters. So, on behalf of the LUI team, I'd like to thank you for sharing some very insightful information about conflict in the workplace and how to manage yourself, how to set boundaries, which is extremely important, which is something I struggle with myself too. So thank you so much for that advice. I believe we have the PowerPoint, so I'll definitely use that to reflect on. So thank you, and I don't know what more to say besides the fact that, you know, we always have to act upon what, you know, what is best for us. So thank you very much.
Yep.
And we'll send you the certificate as well.
Thank you very much, guys. And also thank you, Kobe, for preparing my lovely slides.
Noted.
Oh.
Thanks,
So
guys.
much. Okay, pass it on to Chelsea once again.
Yeah, Senri, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Am I audible?
Yep, loud and clear.
Okay, great. My name is Senuri. I'm a LUI program coordinator. It's very nice to meet you all. And it is an absolute honor and pleasure for me to deliver the vote of thanks today. Thank you guys as a whole for your amazing contribution, a very insightful and fruitful discussion. Our first distinguished panelist, Rahym, thank you for teaching us the importance of meeting young people where they are. That really resonated with me, and I'm sure the rest of us. And for reminding us of the importance of having a concrete understanding of the issues that young people face, and understanding young people as they are. Then Firhaana, thank you for helping us delineate advocacy and what advocacy is not. I think that's a very important distinction. And for also teaching us that we as advocates must learn to evolve. And also showing us the importance of changing mindsets and how that is central to advocacy. Jamila, thank you so much for approaching a very tough topic, a very sensitive topic, I would say, which is conflict management in the workplace, and reminding us of the importance of emotional intelligence and respecting boundaries. Then thank you so much to David, president and founder of LUI, Khadija, floor member, and the rest of the amazing LUI team members. And also, last but not least, thank you very much to our attendees for participating in this event and all of your contributions.
Thank you very, very much, Senri, for that vote of thanks. And we have come to the end of episode 2 of our webinar series. Before you leave, I've just dropped the feedback link in the chat. Plus, if you aren't following us, there's a link to our link tree, our website, a whole bunch of different resources and everything. But I just really, really want to thank you all for continually supporting LUI, not only with this webinar series, but from liking to resharing to commenting on our posts, for hyping us up. We all appreciate it. We see every single one of you. We really, really thank you for always supporting us. And we have come to the end. I hope that you continue to have a great Sunday. Have a great week. Tomorrow is Monday, but tomorrow is also Monday. So let's get the ball rolling. And we hope to see you soon for episode 3. We will drop information when that becomes public. But yes, thank you very, very much, every one of you, for being here. Have a great Sunday.
Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you very much, Chelsea, for moving this whole project into action. You did a wonderful job. Can't wait for episode number 3. Super excited.